we know that syntactic structure can be quite informative, certainly for adults, for figuring out what a new word like pilk, for example, might mean. And so how good are kids at using the syntactic structure, right, to figure out what part of a visual scene to focus on, right? And it turns out that 3 and 4-year-olds are able to do the very same thing of using the syntactic frame, the syntactic structure, the syntactic context, though only if the context is fairly simple. So if you say something like this, you have this penguin, and maybe the penguin is waving and standing, and you say the penguin is pilking, right? And so this frame, the fact that it is blanking, right, with that ing ending, right, that tells you, oh, pilk seems like a verb. The penguin is waving, for example, is something that could fit very well in this syntactic frame. And so pilk seems to be a verby-like thing, seems to be an action type thing, is probably referring to this motion that the penguin is doing. Let's say, if the penguin is waving that flipper back and forth, and 3 and 4-year-olds can figure that out. Now, no, kids are kids and they can get distracted. So actually, if the linguistic context is even slightly more complex, they can't do this. You say the cute penguin is pilking. They get distracted by cute, and now they can't seem to figure out what pilk means, right? So, it's kind of a tenuous thing, but they can do it at 3 and 4, right? And it turns out, again, if you have, again, these simple linguistic contexts, you can get even younger kids to be able to use the syntactic structure. So 23-month-olds are able to, when they see a picture of an apple, say, bouncing up and down, that's what these little arrows are talking about. So imagine this apple is going boop, 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 like that, right? And someone says, look, it dazes, right? And you're like, well, I don't know what daze is, but if you see this apple going boop, 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 up and down, and you recognize that frame, right? It blanks is, right? Is a verby type thing. This is an action. Oh, I'm probably talking about that motion that the apple's doing. It bounces, for example. And 23-month-olds figure out that you're talking about the motion and not, say, the apple itself. Versus if you say, look, a daze, right? Look, a fruit, right? Something is a nouny type thing that can fit there as the object, and then they know to look at the object. So 23-month-olds can do the same kind of syntactic structure, focusing, again, with a simple linguistic context. 27-month-olds, again, just over 2, can use adverbs like slowly to help focus on the parts of the observed event that matter, right? So unlike with the cute penguin, it was kind of distracting. Here, if you say it's going to pilk slowly, that slowly actually seems to help them rather than distract them, to really focus on the action, right? So it's going to blank slowly, that's a verby type thing, and slowly, again, maybe because it's more recent, right? And it really helps them focus in on using that structure to figure out you're talking about the action. 2-year-olds in general can use the words surrounding a verb a lot of time to determine what kind of action it encodes. So you say, I'm daxing my toy. This is a verby type frame. So you look at this and they're like, oh, so there's a fellow and he's sort of bowing down and there's a spinning top, and you say, I'm daxing my toy. Well, he must be the one spinning it. You're talking about the motion of spinning. I'm spinning my toy, right? That frame corresponds to this part of the action, right, as opposed to him bowing. Versus, if you do something very similar, I'm daxing to my toy, right? Now they're able to focus in on the fact that there's a difference, that to means something. And now you're not talking about directly doing something to the toy. You're talking about doing something in the general direction towards the toy. Well, that must be the bowing motion, right? So 2-year-olds can do this, right? It's a simple enough linguistic context that they can apparently do this. An 18-month-old, so now we're talking like a year and a half, they can use this kind of frame for verbs to figure out what new verbs means. Again, you have your spinning top here, and you say, it's pratching. Very simple linguistic context. You're a year and a half year old, you're 18-month-old, so yep, you're talking about that motion of spinning, right? You're not talking about the object. And they can also use determiners like the to figure out that the next word should have a reference. They figured out that that's a nouny object type context at 18 months. And some of the sensitivity is already present at 12 months old, right? So, I mean, they're really able to figure out a lot from the linguistic context, from the syntactic structural clues that come in their linguistic context.